Hi, good evening and welcome to the San Diego Filmmakers October membership meeting. Yay! Woohoo! We have Mary Poplin of Imagineer Systems.
That's me.
Here to talk to us about miracles in post-production.
Yeah, I sure am.
So without further ado, you guys have hung in there with us enough.
All right, hi guys. I am Mary Poplin, like she said, from Imagineer Systems. It's not Poppins, I promise. It's this close. But anyway, missed it by that much. So I am Imagineer Systems product specialist. I'm going to show you a lot about Mocha tonight. But I'm not just Imagineer Systems product specialist. I'm the entire Los Angeles office for our piece of software. So and West Coast. So if you guys have any sorts of questions, email me, or you can go to our website, www.imagineersystems.com, and go to contact support, and you will get me 50 to 75% of the time. So the other 25% of the time you'll get Martin, who is our product manager, and he's based out of Melbourne. We are a sort of very international company. Tonight I'm going to show you Mocha, which is a very cool piece of software, and I kind of want to show you a little bit about how to make your dreams of low-budget effects come true. A lot of times when we're doing these small projects, we don't really have time to go and do the work that's necessary in order to get stunning visual effects, because it's usually expensive. But we are used everywhere from YouTube to high-end post-production houses, who I'm probably not allowed to like name drop. But anyway, the fact of the matter is we're used everywhere. So if we are not really out of anyone's budget. So let's talk about how that works. Most people have to wear many hats. Like I myself, I'm a product specialist. I'm also a SAG actress. I'm also a member of the Visual Effects Society. I also make my own short films, and I'm a member of a well, it's not a post-production group, it's a production group called Nerds Making Shit. So very PC name. And like the name says, what we do is a lot of, we end up making a lot of nerdy short films. The last one we just wrapped yesterday was called WoW, and it's called WoW for World of Warcraft. It's about a girl and a guy trying to convince their significant others not to play WoW instead of paying attention to them. Now let's talk, because that happens. Happens more than you think. Anyway, so the first thing we're going to talk about is tracking and why you care about it. Has anybody in here ever done any visual effects? Yes. I thought it sounded really exasperated. That was like a super exasperated yes. Oh, Roto. I hate Roto. Okay. But we'll show you how to do Roto quicker and easier and make it less painful. So we're going to come in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to load up my track, and I'm going to show you how Mocha works. All right, so I'm going to make this bigger in a second, just so we can switch to a different view, and we're not going to be crammed, but my screen is going to be a little cramped right now because we're on a VGA export, and I can't get the resolution any higher. So this is what we're going to live with for now. Now, tracking is necessary for all visual effects, okay? And if you've done visual effects before and post-production before, you know there are usually two types of tracking, all right? And that's gonna be your point tracking and your feature tracking. And well, point tracking is really rough because point tracking tries to hang on to the same couple of pixels over the entire screen. Feature tracking does that with a slightly larger area, and it does its best, but it still can't really hang on over things like blur and motion blur and focus blur and any sort of quick movement and things that change the image like lighting changes, okay? Mocha is a planar tracker, and we actually just won an Academy Award for this technology about a year ago and some change. And, oh, thank you. I got to go to the Oscars. It was like the nerdy Oscars, but it was still the Oscars. And I was very excited. Anyway, so the way we work is we actually draw a spline around a plane of information, and this always throws people off, but I'm going to walk you through this. Everybody's going to get Mocha by the end of the evening. So what do we mean by planar tracking? It sounds like a buzzword. It's not. What it actually is, and this is, I'm going to give you the programmer speak, and then I'm going to tell you what it actually means. Planar tracking is tracking a pattern of pixels that move relative to one another through the scene, which sounds like a mouthful, but what it really is a texture that's moving in one direction. So think of objects in terms of low poly models, and you will get mocha, okay? And when I say low poly models, I mean really, like try to break them up into the most basic planes. So does anybody in here play video games at all? Okay, great, wonderful. So low poly models, a lot of times when you see video game characters, they have like two planes on their face. It's like the front plane and the side plane. And that is the way you need to think about tracking inside of mocha. If anybody in here is an artist, think Bridgman, okay? Like Bridgman breakdowns. That was a sea of no understanding, so I'm gonna go with you don't know Bridgman. If you wanna learn how to draw, Bridgman's a great start. Okay, so what we do is we draw a spline around the object we want to track. In this case, I'm going to just draw this right around the front of this car. Okay, and we decide how we want to track this. We're going to track the luminance channel because that's all RGB and RGB channels together. We're going to use 90% of the minimum pixels used. That means Mocha's going to try to follow 90% of the pixels inside of the shape. The higher that number, the more accurate your track will be, or the larger your shape, the more accurate that track will be. Smoothing level is for if you have super grainy footage, you will almost never have to worry about it unless you shoot in the pitch black dark or you have 1960s grain footage, okay? So don't worry about it. Other than that, it happens, man. We track 5 different parameters at the same time. These are keyframeable at any time during the track. So this is where people's mind starts to break on Mocha. With point and feature trackers, you can't really change stuff mid-track. You have to sort of put it on and hope for the best. With Mocha, you can put it on and you can nurse it in the right direction if it's not getting there, but usually it gets there on its own. Now we track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective. Translation's super obvious, okay? Rotation, very obvious, we get all of that. Scale, also super obvious, everybody always understands that, but shear and perspective really mess people up. Let me show you the difference. Shear is just warp in X and Y, so like a square becoming a diamond, right? And then perspective is perspective space, where it actually moves in Z space. Now, some of you are thinking that's obvious, but some of you don't do customer support, so I promise you it's not as obvious as you think it is. I'm just gonna track translation, scale, and rotation for the front of this car because it's not moving in Z space, and if I tell Mocha to track it, Mocha's gonna believe me that there's perspective there because Mocha is a computer. And just like all visual effects, if you tell a computer to do something, it's gonna do just that. So, you have to be smart about what you're telling it. We're just going to track large motion, and we're going to go ahead and hit track forward. Now what you're going to see, let me just go ahead and go to a different view right quick. Let's go to layout 1 and hide this over here so that you can see. All right, we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to go ahead and hit track forward on this. And now Mocha is going to follow that through the scene, even though there's an explosion and smoke and all kinds of crap going in front of my car. Now, this is a big deal if you do a lot of effects because this kind of thing is like nearly impossible to do with point trackers and feature trackers. This is the kind of thing that you need a planar tracker for. So from this data, what can you do with this? Well, Mocha Pro is what we're actually giving away tonight is Mocha Pro. And Mocha Pro exports to everything, but how many people in here have After Effects? That's a lot of hands, yay. Okay, so in After Effects, if you have CS4, CS5, CS6, Creative Cloud, or Creative Cloud 2014, what a mouthful, okay, you have Mocha for After Effects. Mocha for After Effects will do all of your tracking and all of your roto and export to After Effects for free. It is on your computer right now. If you are doing rotoscoping in After Effects by hand, stop, okay? Don't do it anymore. I have done you a favor tonight by telling you that. Never do roto by hand again. Now, in Mocha Pro, we export to everything, okay? So for our tracking data, and our tracking data is represented by our surface tool, which you can see here. This little blue square is our surface tool. That's how we translate the data, the track data outside of Mocha, because the tracking data actually just exists as this nebulous sort of data inside of Mocha. And then to translate it out, we hook a surface tool up to it, and that is our translation tool, okay? So we export all 4 corners or just the translation data. So in our tracking data, we export After Effects corner pins and transform data. We go to assimilate scratch corner pins, Autodesk point tracker data, and stabilizer data. Okay, that's going to be for your flame and smoke users in here, which I know we have a few. Avid tracking data, okay, that has to go in through Boris Effects. Digital Fusion comp data, so if you are a Digital Fusion user, this is exciting for you. Also, Digital Fusion was just bought by Blackmagic, so I'm really looking forward to continuing to develop that. Final Cut Basic Motion and Final Cut Distort Corner Pins. Here's the thing though, this is not Final Cut X, okay? It's Final Cut 7. Final Cut X has something called Slice X and Track X that another company put our planar tracking data into Final Cut X via this module that plugs into Final Cut 10. So if you want to use that, you can, but it will not be out of Mocha Pro. We also do Motion Basic Transform, Motion Basic Corner Pins, Nuke 7 tracker nodes, ASCII nodes, and corner pins. The ASCII text is if you have any sort of like special tool that you've written. Does anybody in here use Nuke, or am I talking to like an ocean of no? Okay, wonderful. So if you've written like a special tool, you know, and you want to read all 4 corners, you can read the tracker node this way, or we copy and paste the tracker node new in version 4 out of Nuke. Quantel corner pins and Shake scripts, okay? We have Shake because Shake can still be read by a lot of other programs, although no one still uses Shake, really. It's true though, like if you ever get a file, like if you ship Roto off to India and you get a file back that's like Mocha and that's Silhouette and every keyframe is baked in, they wrote it in Mocha and they loaded it into Silhouette. Although there's no need to do that anymore because Silhouette actually licensed our tracker. So to export your shape data, we export Adobe Premiere shape data, combustion GMask scripts, flame GMask scripts, Nuke Roto nodes, and Roto Paint nodes for whatever version of Nuke you have. Shake Roto shapes, Mocha shape data for After Effects, which can paste in as an effect if you go to Edit Paste, or as a spline if you go to Edit Paste Mocha Mask. This is a free plugin that you can download and just put right into After Effects, but it should already be installed in After Effects because you already have a free version of Mocha there. We also have Mocha shape data for Final Cut. If none of those work for you and you have super proprietary Wooj, you know, in your studio, you can go to File, Export Rendered Shapes, and you can render out black and white mats with motion blur, or color mats if you need to pull keys from them, or grayscale scaled mats if you're doing the fun stereo conversion pipeline. So depends on what you need. So that's the tracker, that's how it works. Okay, so why do you care, all right? You guys care because the most tedious part of visual effects is tracking, okay? The most tedious part, tracking in Roto, I would say. Match moving, Roto, tracking, okay, which is all various tracking applications, and Paintwork. And what we do is we help you with all of those applications. Now, I first started using Mocha probably 5 years ago, and I tell everybody this story, but I'm gonna tell you guys this story because it's funny. I was rotoing boats that had been shot from another boat, and they had rigging, and it was like just keyframes in every frame, and I'd been rotoing it for probably 4 hours. And my friend David Shorey comes up behind me, and he's like, "Mary, why are you doing that?" And I was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm rotoscoping, you know, leave me alone." Like, no, you know, and he was like, "Why aren't you doing that in Mocha?" And I was like, "I don't know, David, why don't you show me?" So like, because I was mad, because it was like, I'd been working on it for so long, and I was super frustrated, and I regret it, but I lost my patience, and he sat down and he rotoed my shot in 15 minutes in Mocha. And I was like, "Thank you, go away." And he came back in an hour and he was like, "So are you gonna use Mocha on like every shot from now on?" And I was like, yes I am. Like, those are the dark days of stereo conversion. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about how we do that sort of roto inside of Mocha. So I'm gonna open a project right quick, and we're going to open Roto. And I think I might have to re-import this footage, so give me 1 second to do that. Yes, yes, and yes. And we'll just go right here to our clip tab, and we're going to relink our footage. Now here's your clip tab in Mocha. This is an important tab. Your clip tab in Mocha shows you the basic breakdown for all of your shots. So we're gonna relink our clip right here. We're gonna select our clip and relink it. And I'm going to go right here to my desktop and grab this. And we're going to grab my file. Oh, don't you do that to me. We can do it from scratch. Let's do it from scratch. The law of demos is that if you do a demo once, something will go wrong. So let's just don't save this, and let's choose. And let's go to NAB, and let's go to Roto, and let's pick my footage. And let's, oh, you know what? Yeah, nope. We're gonna do something different. And here's why. I recently wiped this computer and the codec didn't work. The codec hasn't been reinstalled, so that will save you later. If Mocha doesn't load a file, it's because you haven't loaded the codec. We'll just cut this part out of the final shot, she said pointedly at the camera. Okay, let's see. Let's go to group, and let's go to Roto, and let's Roto this. All right. We can do things on the fly. We're not worried about minor hiccups. We're pros. Okay. Now, so rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is generally like a real pain, okay? A lot of times you have to do this sort of tedious work where you follow something and you go frame by frame. In Mocha, what we do is we actually want to have Mocha do the bulk of the motion for us, have Mocha be our roto assistant, and it's like our unpaid intern. And from there, what we do is we use the motion that it mostly gives us, and then we tweak keyframes over the top of that to end up doing rotoscoping in about a third of the keyframes that we would normally use, and about half the time. I can vouch for those numbers because I guarantee you I have done everybody in here's like lifetime share of roto. So maybe one or two of you have like a lot, but I used to do conversion, I gotta tell you, a lot of roto. So when you do tracking inside of Mocha, there's a couple of cool things to note. You need to track from areas of the most detail to areas of the least detail. So what you want to find the area where your image that you're trying to track is the largest in frame, the least blurry, and the most parallel to camera, okay? Now we're gonna track this. I'm not gonna spend too much time on Roto because it's literally the world's most boring thing in the world to go over, but that's okay. We're gonna track this forward. And it should hang on pretty decent. It does, groovy. And then we're gonna track backwards. And you notice how I'm only tracking the front of his face, okay? The reason I'm only tracking the front of his face is because, what did I say earlier about low poly models? When you think of people's heads, the front of your face is a totally different plane than the side of your face, which is at 90 degrees to the other parts of your face. Everybody wants to think of heads as round. They are not even close to being round. You know, that's just sort of like the way that we perceive them. It's kind of like, there's a word for it in art where like people want to draw eyes that look like footballs, but eyes aren't really shaped like footballs at all. Anyway, there you go. Learn something new every day. Let's just go over to our layer controls. And in our layer controls, what we're going to do is we're going to call this track. And in Mocha, we're going to hide this. We're going to turn the gear off because the gear is the action item inside of Mocha. What I mean by action item is it means that this layer is active. So if you're tracking that, if I left that on, it would continue to track. We don't want to do that. We're done tracking. So we're also going to lock it. We lock this as a sanity check because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm working at like 11:30 at night and I make mistakes. I like to make sure that my layers are locked. Okay? From here, what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to draw a rough roto shape right around his face here. Now, if I were going to roto this for real, I would do his hair separately. So that's why I'm leaving his hair out, because his hair is going to be moving in a completely different sort of way than the rest of his face. A lot of times, you're going to be tempted to roto like this, and let me show you what never to do. Like, never, ever do this sort of thing where you're going around the whole guy and we're trying to draw his whole shape. We end up with something like this. Never, ever do this. You're going to make a keyframe on every frame no matter what, okay? What you want to do is you want to do what's called paper doll style roto, where you split everything up at the joints. So if you're rotoing some person and they're doing this, you want to track here and here, because these move totally separate. And you'll end up doing way, 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 way less keyframes, okay, than if you tried to do the whole thing that way. Now, we're going to sort of shrink this a little bit. I'm using X-splines. X-splines do this really cool trick where you pull tight, where you pull tight for corners and you relax for curves, okay? We have Beziers right here if you want to use them. I don't like them. The reason I don't like them is because I have to worry about this side of the edge and this side of the edge, and it's just awkward, okay? I feel like X-splines are intuitive and faster, and what I'm concerned about is the faster part, okay? Now, I'm going to take this, we're going to call it Face Roto, only spelled right, and we're going to come over here to our View Layer Properties, and we are going to link Face Roto to Face Track. And now, magic happens. It follows it through the whole scene. So what I have to do is just adjust where it's off. So in Mocha, we have some cool roto tools that I really like. Let me just go ahead and adjust this ear here so that I can actually do some nice roto. And some there and there. Okay, so we have this cool tool called the Auto Pan tool, okay? It's also sometimes called the Stabilize tool. Here's what it does. It takes my roto and it centers it so that I can always just adjust my roto and see where it's off. So this makes doing roto way easier. So we're just gonna look for where it's off, and I'm gonna look for like the most different angle. Move this over here. Move this over here. Pull that over there. All right, and now it tweens between these two animation points, and I can adjust it where it needs to be adjusted. So we end up with something that looks very nice, very quickly, without having to do a whole lot of work. Now, if I'm very lazy, and I do not like doing roto, I think I mentioned that before, what we can do is we can come over here and we can actually turn on motion blur. So I can render this out with motion blur if I want, and that is actually very handy. So if I roto to the inside of all my motion blur and I render it out, I'll actually get motion blur for free for the rest of the shot based on whatever parameters I stick into Mocha. That's only if you render it. It doesn't copy and paste out when you do shape data, but it's still a really cool trick. Does anybody have any questions about roto before I move on? Wonderful. Yes, dear.
I don't really do film.
So what is roto used for?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, what is roto used for? In film, a lot of times you have to do compositing. So you have to put objects into a scene that were not there when you shot the footage, okay? In order to do that, you have to separate the elements out. To separate the elements out, it's not like Photoshop, you just can't like erase around it. You have to say, you know, this is the matte that defines this object, this is the matte that defines this object. Rotoscoping is how you create that matte. So.
I thought it was an animating.
It is animating.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you mean old school rotoscoping?
Yeah.
So rotoscoping is another word for an old school animation technique where you actually take a character and you draw them over a video footage. And that is where the word originally comes from. What it means now, though, usually for visual effects, is creating a matte that you use to split out your project.
Digital.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, although you can still do digital rotoscoping of the old school animation technique.
I thought this guy in Texas patented some kind of electronic rotoscoping, 3D something. You know this guy?
Nope.
Okay. Whatever.
But if you want to see a cool example of old school animation, there's on Netflix, I think Fire and Ice is on there, and that's a pretty...
Right, yeah, Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah, yep. The more you know. Okay, so more cool stuff to show you guys. Mocha has a tool called the Lens tool. And the Lens tool, let me just see where we are on here. Da-da-da-da-da. Insert here. So, the Lens tool is a tool inside of Mocha, and what it does is it actually solves for lens warps in your shot. The reason you would need this, okay, is let's say you shot your footage on a GoPro. Okay, let's say you've attached a GoPro to a camera, like, you know, let's say you've got like a, not a camera, a helicopter, you know, your little choppers that you can, your little drone choppers that you can get. Let's say you're into that, or you want like the poor man's drone, you know, you do a GoPro on that. There's ones that hold heavier cameras, but most people, that's like out of their price range. So let's say you're doing something like that. GoPros have a really, really aggressive lens curve. And in order to solve that, you need a tool that can figure that out. If you're shooting your own stuff, which a lot of you guys are, okay, shoot a grid. I cannot stress that enough. Like, I don't know how many times you guys have done visual effects and like gotten no grid from the DP, but like shoot a grid and it will give you the curve of the lens. You just take one shot, okay? It doesn't matter if it's one frame, okay? And you solve for the lens and you can unwarp your footage that way. Now, in this tab, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to our clip tab, and what you're gonna notice is we have blanking on this shot. So we deal with that really easily. We just cut it out in the clip tab. You don't have to worry about it. We're not actually cropping anything. It just makes Mocha not look there. Now, to solve for this lens warp, here's what we do. We go ahead and we hit we go ahead and we go to lens. We go to locate lines. We tell Mocha to look at every line in the shot and tell me what it thinks is curved and needs to be straight. Mocha says everything. So, because Mocha's a computer. So I hit in for new line, and I connect the dots. In for new line, and I connect the dots. In for new line, and I connect the dots. And, oh, I didn't hit in for every new line. We hit in for new line. Come on, work with me. Why are you being this way today? New line. Doot, doot, doot. Okay. New line. Click. Click. And you should get 4 different colored lines, Mocha. Thank you. All right. So you end up with these 4 lines that Mocha's going to use as a parameter solve for the shot. It's going to say, what does it take to get these curved lines straight? Now, I'm going to show you a couple different uses for this. We have to tell Mocha what kind of parameter solve this is. It's really easy. It's like lowest common denominator stuff. 1 parameter, okay, is going to be a single sphere. That's going to be your single barrel distortion. 2 parameters is going to be 2 spheres. It's going to be your fisheye distortion, right? Anamorphic is its own weird oblong thing. If you guys are using anamorphic lenses, you know what that warp looks like, okay? Now, we're going to do a 1 parameter solve, turn our grid on so you can see no change is happening, okay? And then we go ahead and hit calibrate, and that actually calibrates the curve of the lens for you, okay? So now you can do cool stuff like render it out flat if you want, and it takes the warp right out for you so that you don't have to worry about that. Or you can go back over to your track tab, and let's go here, and you can go ahead and take your Mocha data, and you can track like this screen, for instance. And I can turn my surface tool on, and my surface tool, that corner pin tool that I was using earlier, will now align with my shot perfectly, okay? So I can do all kinds of fun stuff with this. I can go ahead and go to my insert clip, and I can put an image on it if I want, and we just let that track forward. And we end up with something that works really nicely. If I don't want to do the compositing tasks necessary to like put this into a shot, if like say I'm an editor and I've been asked to do a screen insert, but compositing is not really my thing, what I would do is I would come over here to my insert tab. I go to motion blur. I check motion blur on because you always kind of want to get that motion to sell your shot. And we just go ahead and hit render backwards. And this renders this out as a pass with its own alpha channel and motion blur that you literally just drop onto your edit. And you are done. And you don't have to worry about it anymore. So that is one of the reasons why this tool is valuable, because it cuts out that sort of hard work that you would normally have to do. Now, well, you have to like render track all of it, but you know. So that is a cool trick. The other thing you can do in this that I kind of want to point out before I run to a different module is we have this tool that I feel like is really underutilized inside of Mocha, and it's the mesh warp tool. Let me just show that mesh right here. The mesh warp tool allows you to take whatever that insert is and mesh warp it along with the track, and it animates. So if you have to replace things like logos on people's shirts and stuff, you can do that. Or, you know, I think I have a demo where I put like a logo on a jellyfish, and this comes in handy. So it's, you know, it's kind of difficult. You never know what you're going to be asked to do. All right, moving on. I want to talk a little bit about the 3D camera solver. Does anybody in here use 3D at all? Does anybody do any 3D scenes? Nope. You do, kind of? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the 3D solver, and we're going to move right on to something you care about. 3D Solver is a cool tool inside of Mocha where what you do is you solve for 2 non-coplanar planes. Mocha gives you a visual effects 3D camera in either an FBX, After Effects, or Nuke format. You can use that to put particles, images, 3D titles, things like that, into a scene very quickly with only doing about 5 minutes worth of work, as opposed to learning Buju's, Synthesize, or Nuke's camera tracker and spending a long time match moving. So that's pretty much the only thing that you care about from that. Now, moving along, anybody in here called to do beauty work? You've got talent and they've got a zit on their face that's got to go? Yeah, okay. You've got a boom mic that's in the shot and won't go away, that kind of thing, cords on the ground, and the kinds of things that happen when we are rushed and don't have a lot of resources available to us. And even if we do have a lot of resources available to us, I was just telling somebody earlier, in Star Trek TNG, I used to watch it and you could see the boom mic on the wall. Very good, very nice. All right, so we're gonna move on. They have boom mics in space. You got to. I mean, you can't get like Picard's like brogue if you don't. So I make bad jokes. They're sometimes funny. All right, let's go to, we're going to the remove tool, yeah. Have you seen this before?
I've seen it as I walk by it.
Don't spoil it for everybody. Okay, she said sarcastically. All right, so the remove tool. Okay, we're going to show you the remove tool in how it works if you don't need a clean plate. I'm also going to, because you guys are going to probably have to use this kind of stuff later on, I'm going to show you how to do it with a clean plate as well, so we're going to get a little more specific. But this is sort of the closest thing that we get to black magic inside of Mocha. It is witchcraft. All right. It really is. All right, so I have here this shot of the sky. And what this is this is a shot from RoboCop. And in compositing, one of the tasks that you have to do a lot, and this is something to think about for like your own work, let's say you want to have a CG character interact in the scene. It is really lame to interact with nothing in midair. It's really, you don't get really good performances out of actors, and you don't really get a good sense of where the object is supposed to be in the scene, which can be really quite awful. So one of the things you can do is you can film a stand-in actor in a location. So this guy needs to be RoboCop, and right now he doesn't look anything like RoboCop. And there's no way to make him look like RoboCop because his waist is not this big. So we have to get rid of that. So what we do is we draw a shape around him. And in this case, I'm just going to do a garbage mat. The laziest garbage mat ever. And we're just going to do some quick roto here. And we're going to follow him off screen. So I'm going to go a couple of frames this way. I can track and roto this, but like it's not worth it because this is such a short shot that it's just not worth it to sit through the tracking. So let's just grab that, and then let's grab these. All right, and we're going to keep moving backwards. I normally use a Wacom tablet when I do this sort of work. I recommend that you do the same because rotoing with a mouse is a little bit like rotoing with a brick as opposed to rotoing with, you know, a pen, which feels intuitive. So I don't work for Wacom or anything. I just, my degree is in illustration and I am more comfortable with a pen. So let's just move this right off screen. And off. And off. All right, and then what we'll do is I will show you how to get rid of this guy. So let's make sure he's always inside that shape. And a good way to check that is you can use that auto stabilize tool again and see if he's always in there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to track the background because we're going to ask Mocha to look in the background to replace the sky. So look at every pixel that moves behind him and recreate what should be behind him in the scene. So we draw a big X. There are other programs that like claim to do stuff like this. They only work if the shot is locked off. So that's kind of no shots. Like I don't think I've seen a locked off shot in a movie recently. So it's a lot of Steadicam though. See a lot of Steadicam. All right, so we're gonna call this background. Maybe there were some locked off shots in, what's that the hotel movie? The Grand Budapest. All right, so I'm gonna take my guy and I'm putting him in the layer above my background. I do this because Mocha will actually, if you roto everything from the foreground to the background, it'll hold out all your layers from all your layers below it, so you don't have to worry about contaminating tracks, okay? So we're gonna track this. Excuse me. I am talking too much. We're going to track this backwards off screen. And we're going to make sure that we get a rock solid track. Okay, Mocha's remove is only going to be as good as the track that we get. Okay, so just like that, looks very nice. Okay, feels locked down to me. I'm going to click on my guy. I'm going to click on remove. That's it. Okay, and I'm going to hit render backwards. If I've done everything correctly, Mocha will remove this guy from the scene automatically so that I can put my CG element back in. Right? And for my next trick, right. So this is super useful. I would call this shot 95% done. The last 5% that I would do is I would add some grain and a little bit of motion blur back into the shot to sort of make it perfect. But I used to work in Color Sweatbox, and shots have to be perfect. They have to be. So for those of you that don't know, Color Sweatbox is where you have to go look at every frame of the movie and make sure that it's exactly how it's supposed to be. You usually do that with the director and the producer breathing down your neck to fix it. So don't recommend. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about how we do this for practical purposes where you can't see behind the object, okay? And I'm going to show you this 100% from scratch. I blew your mind. I wish I could take credit for the programming, but I can't. It's amazing. It's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. Let's go to beauty work. That's not what I wanted. I'm going to show you a different file. New project, choose, and let's go to demos, and let's go to, I changed my mind, I want to show you a different one. Let's go to beauty. Yeah, this one. Because this is more impressive than the other one, because the other one is has less blemishes. Let's hit OK. Yes, overwrite. Okay, so this shot. I told you guys about that nerds making shit production company thing that I do. This is one of our short films. It's about an elf lady who is confronting her lordly love, and telling him that she cannot go with him. He's a soldier and a human, and he'd never understand. So what we do is we needed to make her look very elven, and she looks very human right now. So what we had to do is we had to make her flawless. Now, this is Mackenzie Jameson. She's a SAG actress. If you want to work with her, send me an email and I will hook you guys up. She's actually great. Anyway, she looks very human, and we need to do something about that. So what we do is we want to make her skin flawless. And we shot this outside in the middle of the summer, so no amount of makeup was going to make her skin flawless because the sun and sweating and everything. So we're just going to fix it in post. So we're going to draw a spline right around the side of her face here, and we're going to start to clean all of this up, all right? So I'm going to track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective, all right? We track that backwards. Now, the reason I'm tracking translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective is because she is actually moving in Z space. If I do not track that, I will not get good results, okay? And y'all let me know as I'm running out of time, and I will wrap things up. But I want to make sure that I cover all of the cool stuff that will help you guys finish your projects. All right, so we track the side of her face. Boom. And then what we do is we're going to base everything off of that track. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make a little circle here. I'm going to use my Add to X-Spline tool. And I'm going to add here. And I'm going to add here. And everything else can really be covered up by Beauty Box. I don't know if you guys have used that before, but it's a really cool sort of skin matting, blurring. I don't want to do roto on skin sort of program. And it's very, very fast and very nice. And we're going to call this blemishes. You can also just do this with general roto too if you want. You can do an overall blur and then blend that back in with the original skin. I never recommend ever in beauty work taking skin and just blurring the crap out of it. She'll end up looking like a Barbie. It does not look good. It looks like 1980s airbrushing. All right, so we're going to take blemishes. We're going to link them to face track. And now I don't have to do new and extra roto, okay? And let's just make sure that everything is still where I want it to be. Now we miss it a little bit, so I'm going to pull this over here, and I'm going to pull these over here just a little bit. All right. Okay, good. All right, so what we're going to do from here is we're going to make a clean plate for this. So I go to the most parallel to the camera section of my shot, okay? And I come over to my Remove tab. And I cannot just tell Mocha to remove this. It's not content aware, okay? It has to have pixels to replace it with. So I hit Create Clean Plate. And I come over here to Photoshop, and I paint one frame, and then I use that whole frame to clean up my entire remove, okay? So let's just find that right quick. Come on, Photoshop, load for me. Load, baby, load. I'm doing all my demo work in Creative Cloud 2014 right now, so if you see something like that wasn't in older versions, it's because it's 2014. And let's just go ahead and go to File, Open. And what we usually do is we find our clean plates in our results folder. So I want to say this was SIGGRAPH, and I want to say it was Beauty Work, and Liz Cleanup, and Results. And let's just pull this plate in. Oh, it looks like I've already cleaned that one up. Is it this one? It is this one. Okay. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to take the just laziest tool in the world, the heal tool. We're just going to heal that, heal, heal. Allow access, Windows. Gosh. We're just going to clean that up, just very quickly. Okay. And now we're going to tell Mocha to just apply this to the entire shot. So let's just hit Save. Or, for you sticklers, we can go to File, Save. Okay? And then in Mocha, in our clean plate clip, you can see our clean plate is exactly where it's supposed to be. We're going to use a linear interpolation mode, and what that is going to do is that's going to change the lighting as this turns over time, and we're going to have Mocha do all of the work for me. So now, we're going to path that through the shot backwards.
Did you need to have the exact same frame that you're applying that to?
It needs to line up, so if you have a clean plate that you have shot, you will need to line it up with a certain frame in your footage to make that work.
Okay.
That's what you were going to ask, right?
Yeah, essentially. Okay.
Yeah. Just so long as it lines up with the plate, like exactly, it will work. The thing about Mocha is it's a real stickler for having those line up, because otherwise it'll be offset by whatever the difference is offset by. So that will just path it through the shot and fix my lighting. If I don't feel like I like those results, like if I feel like the edges are too hard, I can come over here and I can turn to Interpolate, and that will actually do a slightly different lighting change. It'll look at every section that the spline is looking at, and it will weight it across the spline so that I don't have to do any paint work by hand. Obviously, I am a fan of not doing paint work by hand. So that is Mocha's Remove tool. The last thing I want to show you guys is I want to show you guys the Stabilize tool. So let's show you that. That's going to be all right. Yes. All right, so Stabilize inside of Mocha. What I tend to think of Mocha's Stabilize tool as is artistic stabilization. And this is where this is going to be interesting for you guys, because you guys do a lot of editing and you do a lot of your own self-producing. Good gravy. Why is that up? Get out of here. All right, so let's just, 1 second. I want to close the internet. Thank you, internet. Okay, all right. So let's say that you need to refocus your shot, all right? Refocusing your shot is an interesting prospect. Sometimes you get a shot, you think it's what you wanted for your edit, but it doesn't tell the right story, so you want to change that. So let's say you want to totally lock down this shot. What we would do is we would come over here, and let's actually go all the way to the beginning. And if we were going to totally lock down this shot, we would track this back rock here. So I'm going to track translation, scale, and rotation, and we're just going to lock that down, track that through the scene. And what this will do is this will lock down my shot in the stabilize module. So I jump over to my stabilize module when I'm done tracking, and I stabilize all motion, and I stabilize maximum smoothing. And now Mocha will just lock this down, no problem for me. It's changed the perspective of the shot. So the reason I prefer this to auto-stabilize tools is auto-stabilize tools look at a bunch of points and you can end up with this wobbly, weird, wonky look. You don't want that. But here's the thing. If you have a super, super unstabilized shot, you've got a lot of motion blur in your shot. Do not lock down a shot that has pulsing motion blur in it. You're going to have a problem when you put that back in your edit. We have a solution for that, though. Let's say you just want to bring it down a notch. Like, let's say your camera guy was getting tired and it's just completely clown shoes everywhere. Okay? That's a technical term, clown shoes. What you do is instead of taking the maximum smoothing up, you cut this down to about, let's say, every 3 frames. Stabilize every 3 frames. Stabilize over every 3 frames. And so Mocha will take a lot of the motion out of it. Let's say you want to bump that number up. This changes to something like, let's say we want to stabilize for every 6 frames. We end up with something that looks very steady cam. Okay? So you can change the look of your shot really, really quickly. All right? Now, I will show you one more thing, and I will say this because it is relevant to you guys, I promise. I had a shot that I helped a guy with one of the last times I went up to San Francisco, and he was working on this documentary, and the centerpiece for his documentary is this interview with this kid, like talking about his very rough childhood. And he's very serious, center of the camera, and the camera is doing this. Okay? And there was nothing to track to sort of get that out of the way because it was a very, the focus was deep. So the bed that he was sitting on was like, it looked like a miniature compared to him because they had really racked the focus. So we couldn't track the bed because it wasn't moving anything like him. And we couldn't track anything else in the room because it wasn't moving anything like him. So what we did is we tracked his face. And we're just going to track this to the shot. Let me turn these thumbnails off. Now, what you can do is you can just track still parts of the face, right? You don't want to, obviously you don't want to do this around their mouth. You know, you want to keep it up here if you can, preferably here. So, unless they're the kind of person that raises their eyebrows and their hairline goes back, it happens. Just depends, use your best judgment. Sometimes it might be their shoulder, depends. Now, we're going to refocus the shot onto the boy. So we're going to just stabilize, let's stabilize maximum smoothing. And now we're looking here instead of looking everywhere else in the shot. So it changes the focus of the shot. Now if you want to just trim it down without having all those black lines around there, you go to Borders, Center, Zoom, Apply Crop. And now your perfect shot is ready to be rendered out and dropped right into your edit. So this is the sort of why you care about what we can do. Now, these tools are very easy to learn. If you want to learn how to use Mocha, you need to go to www.imagineersystems.com. We have free videos and free training. We have something called Fundamentals of Mocha. It will walk you through the process. I talk very fast, but Ben Brownlee is the guy who does this. And I don't know if you've ever watched any like British nature shows, but he has a sort of very soothing voice and talks at a very refreshing and relaxing pace. And he'll walk you through all the fundamentals of Mocha, and I promise you it's worth about an hour of your time to sit through them. They're free, so it's pretty hard to argue with free training. You can also go to our website and you can download, in our download section, Mocha Pro, and it is free and unlocked for 2 weeks. Totally unlocked. It doesn't, like you can render anything out of it, you can export it to whatever you want to export it to, you can use it fully for 2 weeks. So if you've got a short film you want to finish, it's a good place to test it. I really don't necessarily recommend testing Mocha in production. I do recommend learning it and then using it. If you try to use Mocha like a fire extinguisher, you are always going to be disappointed. But if you learn to use Mocha for real and you start using it on the bulk of your shots when you need to use it, you are going to find that you learn it well enough that the hard shots are not even hard anymore. So I'm saying that from experience, not because I work for the company. I work for the company because I like the software. Like I don't rep the software because like they pay me to. I mean, they do pay me, but you know what I mean. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, I'm Mary P. at Imagineer Systems, and we can open this up to questionings and raise the lights and I would love to do a motion like this and have the lights go up. That would be like magic. Ah. Yeah.
So Greg and Dennis, if you guys could grab the microphones, and we'll take some questions.
Marvelous.
Simply marvelous.
Yeah, no problem. I try to make these fun, so.
Kind of similarities to Nick software.
Oh, yeah?
Control points.
Which?
Nick software for still photography.
Oh, I've never used that.
Oh, me too.
That's cool. Yeah, that's very fun. I've never used it. It's NICKS? NIKS. Okay, very cool. And it lets you warp things and move things around and change colors, or?
Well, yeah, control points for different lighting.
Oh, you can relight shots.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Do we have any questions? Because I live in Los Angeles and I don't make this drive very often, so you have me here.
Just out of curiosity, when you use the remove tool and it doesn't work the way you want it to, what kind of errors do you get, and what kind of artifacts and what kind of stuff do you have to fix?
Okay. When you use the remove tool and you see, there's a couple of different errors you can get visually that are not going to line up, and usually those are due to roto mistakes or bad tracks. If you find that the removed pixels do not move with the rest of the motion of the shot, then your track is bad and you need to redo your background track. If you find that you do a remove and you have a stuttering across the screen, what you have done is you have actually rotoed inside of motion blur. Mocha is not content aware. What it does is it looks at all of the pixels in that background motion and it holds out the foreground shape, and it basically like says, where are the other pixels that go here? And it re-puts them in one by one and matches the lighting. If you end up with stuttering across, what's happened is somebody has walked through your shot and you did a garbage bag around them like we did with the RoboCop guy, and instead of having that huge shape around him like I did, we've gotten too close and it's left his pixels on the background. So those are the two main errors I see. Other errors that I see people use is when they use a clean plate, they don't use this little thing down here called use clean plates exclusively. And what that does is that tells Mocha to look at the clean plate instead of the file. And if you don't tell it that, it'll look at the file and it'll replace the object you're trying to remove with the object that you're trying to remove. So, so those are the main errors that I see.
Does it tend to do things with perspective, like mess up the background, make it look like a postcard too much? Does that happen?
Only if your track is too bad. But here's the thing. I recommend that you do a clean plate for every 100 to 200 frames of animation and every 25 to 45 degrees of turning. So if you have a shot and you're trying to replace something on the ground and it is doing like a huge turn like this, you are probably going to need to do a clean plate at the end and probably a clean plate at the beginning and maybe one in the middle. So it just depends. The cool thing though is you can use Mocha's clean plate that it's made to patch as much as possible and then fill in what Mocha couldn't fill in. So you can just hit create clean plate on those frames and Mocha will try to fill it in. The other thing you can do is if Mocha can't see totally behind the object, you hit create clean plate after it's cleaned as much of it as it can, and then you only clean that small section that it can't get. So it's a pretty cool tool that way. Anybody else? That was a really good question, actually. Okay, here's what's in After Effects. The remove tool is not in After Effects. I showed off Mocha Pro today, which is why I was talking about the things that just go to Mocha Pro. Here's what's in After Effects. The Clip tab, the Track tab, and the Adjust Track tab. And it only exports to After Effects. It doesn't do removes, it doesn't do inserts, it doesn't do stabilize. If you want to do stabilize, you can use Mocha's tracking data, and you can go over here to Track, go to Export Tracking Data, Invert, and that will actually stabilize your data. But you won't have the cool sort of tweening tools that you get with the Mocha Stabilize tool, but you can write expressions to get around that if you only want to stay in the Mocha for After Effects version. If you want to write expressions. If you know how to write expressions. The whole thing about Mocha Pro is it's meant to make those sorts of tasks easy for people who do not necessarily do visual effects all the time. So what I like to tell people about Mocha Pro is if you're a good artist, it makes it to where you double your workflow. If you are someone who is not very experienced, it makes it to where you can do tasks that you would never normally be able to do. So if you're an editor, it can really boost your workflow if you, because you can do things like screen inserts that you wouldn't normally be able to do, and do like beauty work on your talent so that doesn't have to be shipped out of house. If you work in television, speed is everything, so you have to really make sure that you get the turnaround in the time you need. If you're a freelance artist, it is very important that you do a lot of work. And if you're a freelance artist, they don't necessarily have to know that it took you half the time that it normally would have taken you. So, under promise and over deliver, guys.
We have a question over here.
What, I have two questions actually. What are the specs on your computer just to run something
Okay.
like Creative Cloud and this, and then
You can
Question.
run Mocha on just about anything that's a decently new computer. Like any computer that's like desktop usage in the last 5 years, you can run Mocha on. What you cannot, this computer in particular has two 512 video cards in it. It's got Intel processors, quad core, and 32 gigs of RAM. But this computer is a portable desktop. Like it's only technically a laptop. It weighs like 25 pounds. So this is a Dell, it used to be Alienware, but it's a Dell Alienware, but Alienware used to be a separate company. Dell bought them. You can get these online, refurbed for a pretty good deal. So if you're interested. Yeah. Yes. No, it's just a quad core, Intel quad core. Sorry. No, Intel quad core. Ooh, my bad. No.
so when you're doing
It is it's a dual video card, though.
when you're doing previews on location, like how practical is this?
This rig?
application? Yeah.
It works, this is my only computer that I use for visual effects right now. So it's pretty effective. Like I can pretty much do everything on it in real time. I mean, I did the tracking and remove like in real time in front of you. So it depends on how long your shot is, how big your shot is.
I was referring more to rendering and
To rendering? Okay. So with rendering, it's going to depend on the size. Okay. If you have 4K footage, I am sorry, that is going to take a couple of seconds per render every time. It just is. Okay. If you're rendering 2K footage, it tends to be like, it depends on how large your area is. If you're trying to do a remove that's half the frame, that's going to take a couple of seconds as well. I mean, there's nothing that I can do about that. But if you're trying to remove blemishes, it's bzzz, no problem. Okay, it just depends on what the shot is, so I can't really give you like a flat line across everything. Visual effects in general is very hard to categorize in that way. Production has been trying to do that for years, but you can't. You just can't you have to look at a shot and actually do some tests on it to give like an accurate prediction of how long it's going to take to render and solve. So, if
Perhaps to that point, does it matter what the original footage is? I mean, we shoot from HDV to 4K.
no, it does not matter. We can track your TV resolution footage and 6K. Okay, if you want to load in Red Dragon footage, you can do that. You won't be able to render Red Dragon footage, but you'll be able to render 6K frames. You'll be able to render like 6K EXRs or TIFFs or something, but it won't render Red Dragon format. If you have footage that is that heavy, you're going to want to come over here to this little 1:1 bar here. This is looking at every pixel. This is looking at half the pixels. This is looking at a quarter of the pixels, okay? If you're working in 6K footage, stay right here. Right here is a healthy, nice place to stay, okay, if you want to do everything quickly. So otherwise, you can cache it all, which, I mean, big studios do. They tend to like use desktop machines and they'll cache everything. They'll like load in these 4K EXRs, cache everything and then work on it. But I don't like to wait 5 minutes for my shot to be available to me, so I like to just get in and go. So it just depends on what you want to do. All right, that's also a good question. Anybody else?
How much does it cost after 2 weeks?
Okay, so the version that ships with After Effects is free. Okay, we have a middling version called Mocha Plus that is used a lot of times for people who are sort of prosumers and After Effects users. Mocha Plus contains the clip tab, lens tab, track tab, adjust track, and the camera solver. Okay, and what that is I want to say that is $295. If you upgrade from After Effects, which almost everybody does, it's $195. If you want the Insert tab, Remove tab, and Stabilize tab, which essentially like do compositing tasks for you, it's $1,495. However, If you were upgrading from Mocha for After Effects, which most people do, it's $995, so it knocks it down into a much more reasonable price range. We also have sales from time to time as well, so, you know. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely follow us on Twitter or Facebook if you want to hear about our sales. We're also, we're doing a fun Halloween contest. If you want to win a license of Mocha Pro and you don't win it here, you can enter our Halloween contest, and if you win, you get a free license of Mocha Pro. But essentially, it's do a video that's Halloween-y that uses Mocha tracking in any way. The end. And good luck. Other questions? Wunderbar. Hi, Bill.
So I'm a little bit confused at your term of clean plate.
Yes.
As a cinematographer, I'm often asked to create a clean plate by removing objects and then shooting it
Yes.
clean. But I don't think that's the way you're meaning it.
If you have a clean plate from a cinematographer that you've actually removed all of the stuff from, that is one way I mean it. That's awesome if we have that. I almost never get that from anybody ever. I wish I did. But what I mean by clean plate for when I'm talking about Mocha and creating clean plates and stuff like that is making a freeze frame of the movie that I can either paint on to paint the objects out and see behind the objects, or use something that somebody shot and overlay it to that file, or something where Mocha has automatically created it because it can see behind the object. So that's what I mean. It's similar things, but one source is way different. Like, your source of a clean plate would be you shot a real clean plate with a lock-off shot. So.
Okay, so here's a nice scenario then. Had a dolly shot through a park, or I'm tracking with bicycles, and in the background I had this terribly obnoxious woman yelling obscenities, but she was just sitting there on the grass in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Was that at all, is that at all possible to remove her
Yes.
from that?
Yeah, I don't even know that you would necessarily need to even have shot a clean plate to remove that.
Well,
You could
I
just,
couldn't, because I couldn't get her to move.
You can just clone over her. Yeah,
She's been here for 39 fucking years.
Yeah.
She's not gonna move.
I ain't
That's what I heard
moving.
like 100 times.
All right. I hear you, crazy lady. So,
So that's a possibility then, to use that tool. for
yes,
that.
so, but what I would do is I would take that plate, I would freeze that frame where she's the largest in frame, freeze that, take it into Photoshop. Over here in Photoshop, I would just start doing this number. I'd be like, and let's just get rid of this screaming lady. So,
Okay,
and then I would load that back in.
cool.
So,
All righty.
yeah, no problem. Yeah. Get out of here. All right, guys. Anybody else? Ooh, one in the back.
What was that website for the free tutorial?
Okay, go to www.imagineersystems.com. Okay, it's going to be a weird spelling. IMAGINEERSYSTEMS.com. Imagineer Systems. It's kind of like Imagineering, but no affiliation whatsoever.
Ron Howard.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
It's time to find out who.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.